Are you ready to talk about war? Why don't you introduce yourselves? Bro, we'll start with you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Griffin Arrett. I am a sophomore studying business management, and I'm excited to be here. A little nervous, but let's do it.
What's up? My name's Joe Asgar. I'm a sophomore studying finance.
Dude, what's your middle name?
Joe Ibrahim Asgar.
Ibrahim.
Yeah.
Because, wait, why is that? I don't remember.
My father's Lebanese.
He's Lebanese. Yeah. Okay.
My name's Hatana Shore. I'm a freshman studying finance.
Hi, my name is Leslie Ann. I'm currently a senior studying human resources.
Cool. Bro, what's it like to be named Joe? Joseph is not an uncommon Lebanese name, by the way, but Ibrahim. How is that? Like, what did people like in high school and so? What did they say? Was it a point of conversation?
Yeah, it was. My father's name was Joe too. I'm a junior, so I was named after him. It's cool. It's kind of odd because it is an odd name because it's not Joseph. It's just Joe on my birth certificate.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's even better. Joe Ibrahim.
Yeah, just Joe. Yeah, Joe Ibrahim.
Dude, I would have so many nicknames for you, man.
Yeah. There's some guys here. They got a lot of nicknames for me.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. So listen. What do you think when you say we're going to talk about war? What do you think? What questions do you think I'm going to ask you? Come up with a question that you think I'm going to ask, okay? Each one of you. Okay? You got one? You got one, bro? Wait, do you have a question yet? Are you good? Come up with a question. Think of one. What am I going to ask you about? No, you got to think before they say something. Be thinking. What do you think I'm going to ask? What questions do you think I'm going to ask them? Got it? Yeah. All right, bro.
I think you're going to ask, is war worth it?
Is war worth it? Okay, well, that wouldn't be the question. The question, that would be the question, but make it an open-ended question.
Okay.
Like a closed-ended means, is war worth it? You'd answer yes or no. You have to.
So, are the benefits of going to war?
No, that's still close.
Okay.
Start with what or how?
How is going to war worth it?
Oh, okay,
for
there
a
you
country?
go. Okay. All right, that's cool. Joeeb.
Who is impacted by war?
Okay.
Maybe what about war is enticing to some?
All right, that's cool. Damn, these are better questions than the questions I have.
I think you would probably ask something revolving around the meaning behind the actual war and like whose battle it actually is and why we're actually doing it, rather than like who it's actually impacting, because that's obvious.
Okay, all right. Hey, so let me ask you guys just a quick question. I just thought of this in the moment. Those are 4 really good questions. So we had the class on with the 3 volunteers from Iran. So once this bombing started, this war started in Iran, how often did you think about the 3 of them talking? Like, you can say not at all, but I'm just curious. Your 3 student classmates.
Yeah, so when it took a couple of days to click, but I was talking to my roommate who took this class last year, and I was just sharing with him that our last in-person class before the war was about 3 students from Iran and how life there is very misunderstood, about how it's not as severe as maybe people are told that it is, and then all that. And I'll say that I'm not super educated on what's going on and why in details, but just to think that that was our conversation, and then for all of that to start going down, I just figured that that's what today's discussion would be about and talk about. And I just couldn't help but think, specifically for those 3, is how does it feel to go to class and share about what life is like? And then not even a couple of days later, it just gets flipped upside down, and all the concerns that come from that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. That's the purpose of the class, right? To give you all an opportunity to see things from the perspective of other people. Anybody else have something that you don't have to share on this one, but do you have anything? All right, man. Let's do this. Let me just ask this. How often do you, just in your daily lives, think about war? Just war as a topic. Wars that are happening, wars around, and anybody can go.
I would definitely say that it's like you have to really, well, in some cases I would say that we think about it much more when we see it on media, when we
No, just how about you? How about you? Just
yeah,
to you.
I would absolutely say, like, if I see it on Instagram or if I see it on TikTok, but I'm not directly affected by it. Of course, I see the decisions and the actions made by our current government, but it's not something that I'm actively being affected by, so I'm not really thinking about it as much as someone who is affected by it.
Okay. All right, that's fair. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say I think about war quite a lot.
Uh-huh.
I think it's something that you can't really avoid thinking about, for some people at least.
Well, so what makes you think about it a lot? Like what?
Yeah, I mean, I just think about, I read the news a lot, and it's something that's, always in the news, and it's also something that I think about, as a Middle Eastern person. I think about how that could impact the region as well.
Mm-hmm. And what's your ancestry?
I am half American and half Saudi Arabian.
Half American, half Saudi. Uh-huh. How about the current, Joe, how about the current war? Are you following it?
I'm following a little bit, yeah, reading the news.
Uh-huh, but a little bit.
Yeah, just a tad, yeah. I mean, it's on the news.
Uh-huh. Well, listen, nobody expects you to, right? I mean, you're all college students, right? So anybody, I know there are some people who think like, oh, you should be paying attention to everything. Well, you should be paying attention to a lot of things, but so should I, and I have a limited capacity to do that. And Griffin, right? How about you? How much are you thinking about this war? Besides that conversation with your roommate?
I'd say that probably 90% of the time I'm only thinking about war when I see it online or when someone else saw it online or heard about something and then brings that up to me. And I think that's kind of intimidating because then you're only thinking about it and your opinions are only going to be based on what you're seeing online. If you're not kind of actively seeking out doing your own research on it or just going out of your way to learn about it more intentionally rather than just waiting for it to come to you, if that makes sense.
Okay. Hey, Joe, how common is war? How common do you think it is?
Pretty common.
What makes you say that? How do you get to that?
I mean, on the news, like, there's always people killing people somewhere.
And what makes you say that you think it's pretty common, though? So on the news, okay, but how many people are killing people somewhere?
I mean, in, like, the grand scheme of things, not a lot, but, like, it's always going on somewhere.
Uh-huh. Is it Hatton? Is that how you say your name?
Hatan.
Hatton? How about you? How common is war?
I mean, I think war is pretty common. I would agree. I don't think there's ever been a period of time where there's not been a war, at least. Maybe not as much war as there has been in the past, honestly, but still a lot of war nonetheless.
Leslie Ann, do you agree with that? Do you have a different opinion? Different
I
thought?
would definitely agree. I would say that the smaller wars aren't talked about as much, but I would definitely say that war is pretty common.
So let me ask you this. There's about 60 conflicts going on in the world that we would call like armed conflicts. They're fairly organized armed conflicts, okay? And there's somewhere between 12 and 15 conflicts that are kind of rooted in state-directed actions, okay? And there's about 12 to 15 wars, like what we really would call wars, like nation against nation, happening in the world today. How many of those could you all name? Just out of curiosity. How many do you think you could name?
Could give you a solid 3.
3? Griffin, you'd say maybe 3? Hatan?
Maybe a couple, like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie Ann, same thing? Well, you know, one is the Iran.
Yeah,
right?
I would definitely say that one, but I can't confidently name more than that. Like,
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So here's my thought. Right. It's a relative thing. I mean, and I want to say this because I think it matters. War is actually pretty uncommon, really, from a sociological perspective. So, I mean, you read the history books. We seem to break history up. If you take world history or whatever, we break it up into wars. But what we don't do is we don't think about. But that's because it just gives us like bookmarks, because there aren't other ways to bookmark history, because it's like, I don't know, conflict, right? Like there's no conflict happening in this room. Everyone's just living life. You know what I mean? And like, people get along very, very well. Over the vast majority of human history, the vast majority of people, the vast majority of time are getting along. People get along really well. And there aren't many wars happening. I mean, really, there aren't many armed conflicts. There's not a lot of conflict, actually. Think of even those of you who have conflict with your roommates. Most of the time, you're not having conflict with your roommates. It just happens. Now and then it erupts. So I say that because I think it's really valuable to, when you're thinking about war, think about war as something that's pretty rare. Just like murder. You know, murder is rare. You see it in the headlines of the newspapers all the time, but you see it because it rarely happens. We only report news that is uncommon. We don't report, hey, everybody got along today and nobody killed one another. Isn't that amazing? No, we put those things out there. So keep that in mind as we go forward. To what degree is war inevitable? Leslie Ann, I'm going to let you take a stab at that.
I would say at every point in life, you're going to not have what you want.
Okay.
And I think that there's a difference between that happening at a personal level and that happening at a political level.
Okay.
And I think that it's much, much easier for you to come to a general consensus, or for you to come to kind of a in-between with a much smaller group of people rather than an entire country or rather than an entire government. So I would definitely say that we have to think about the entire reason for the war. So we have to think about, why is it happening? Who are the people or the sectors involved?
The instigators.
Right. We have to think about the instigators. We have to think about their political history. So have they been known for really like trying to figure out the issue instead of going to war? And I think we have to think about whether there is an alternative outcome that is not an in-between.
Okay, all right. I like that. That's a cool answer. How about someone else, man? Joe, how about you? What degree is war inevitable? Like when you think about war, think about, you and I are having a drink at the bar, right? We're like, oh, fuck, people are, and we're pounding down beers, right? And it's like, yeah, people are always going to be fighting wars. War is always going to happen. Like, here, have another Busch Light or whatever it is that you drink.
It really just like depends on like how reasonable like the two parties are. Like if you're just like dealing with like someone that's just not able to be reasoned with and they're just like insane, I mean, violence becomes more of like something that could happen. But I think if both parties are like reasonable, can work something out with their words, then can be pretty rare thing.
Griffin, how about you? How about just the human nature? Focus on human nature. Like, that's cool. I like that answer. Good answer.
Yeah, so, I mean, war is kind of what it gets to eventually, but I'd say, it can start with any conflict. I think that humans, they really appreciate relationship. first of all. And so, who they relate to, their family, the people in their community. So that's huge for them. They're going to do whatever it takes to protect those people, and they're going to do whatever it takes for the good of those people, at least in their mind. Not that is necessarily true. And so that's the first thing. And then also they can be very selfish. We as humans can be very selfish. So I think that, you can work something out with words, but eventually you're just going to get to the point where you meet somebody who doesn't want to work it out with words, and they just want to be on top of the food chain.
So you're going to just battle.
And so eventually...
when you say somebody, do you mean also nations?
Yeah.
Who want to be on top of the food chain? Yeah,
nations who want to be on top of the food chain, and that can start with the leaders or just, the culture that they've built.
Okay.
And so they're going to try and take over somebody else, or they might try and put themselves above somebody else. But then that other side, man, they care about their people, they care about their families. Okay. They're going to do whatever it takes to protect them. And so, like you said, conflicts, there's way more conflicts than wars. But I think that it's a similar idea, even if it's not officially a war.
Okay, all right. And by the way, we're just like circling around some things. I'm going to show you some stuff. We're going to dig in. Hatan, who's responsible for war?
I don't think you can pinpoint a specific, type of. Generally, I'd say governments. If you ask who's responsible.
Are there any particular governments that you think about, like?
I mean, throughout history, there's been many different governments that might have been more warmongering than others. So,
when you think about war going forward, are you optimistic mostly, or do you lean more optimistic or more pessimistic? Like we could stop war. Like we human beings on the planet could stop war.
I definitely lean optimistic. I think it's possible. I think, war is inevitable in many ways, but it's also very avoidable. And so I think there is a way going forward.
Do you have the idea that this current, just out of curiosity, this current war in Iran, is this one that you think is avoidable?
Entirely, yeah.
Are there, Leslie Ann, are there some groups or religions that are more and or less responsible for war?
That's a controversial topic.
Wait, what makes it controversial? Because I said religion?
Not necessarily. I think it's you choosing a particular group in society, or you choosing a particular group to associate with war and kind of causation. I think that's what makes it controversial. But I would say it depends who you ask, and it depends on their knowledge.
Okay.
I think it depends also on the environment that they grew up in, kind of the ideals and the mentality that their families grew up with. Because like politics and government, everybody sees things differently, no matter how it actually happens. So there's always an alternative narrative.
Okay. All right. Listen, man. Let's go to Griffin then. Speaking of, dude, you're a Christian. All right. You're really Christian? What's that mean for you?
Being really a Christian for me means I truly believe that Jesus Christ came, lived on the earth, lived a perfect life, and died for my sins so that I could be reconciled to God. And that's like the core of my character and how I treat people and how I view the world. And when you're asking the question about, certain religions being the cause of war, I think that, for the sake of being a Christian, I think that there's been a lot of situations where people use the Bible to justify going to war, and maybe abuse the Bible. And so I don't think that that's a reflection of God's character. But I also can't sit here and ignore what they did.
You as a Christian, how do you make sense of? Well, hang on. Let me show you something. Go to the next slide. Okay. So, Christians, right? I mean, you know, like the Holocaust, for example, right? The Germans, and then, you know, the French and the Poles and the Italians and everybody who, you know, really helped participate in the Holocaust, they were all Christians, right? I mean, they weren't Christians in the way I would identify a Christian. Like, just like Busch Light, I wouldn't call it a beer. So, you know, okay, so they're not Christians in the way I would consider Christians, but they were Christians. They went to church. You know, you go like, let's run let's go to Auschwitz and work and kill X number of Jewish people, and then let's go to church, you know, and celebrate God. How do you make sense of that as a Christian? Like,
Yeah, that's hard.
dude, how old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
Okay, dude, listen. He's 20 years old. I'm asking him in front of all of you, as a Christian, right, on the cameras, to just think for the very first time, like, how do you as a Christian, 100 million, nothing has ever come close to that. There's nothing in human history that in a single century, a single religion has been responsible for so much death. And so, like, and I don't have a bone to pick with Christianity. I'm just out of deep curiosity. Like, yeah, how do you?
When I read the Bible, and specifically the teachings of Jesus, I don't see the justification of going to war and killing people. And a lot of those countries that you're referring to are people that went to war to have more power and to have more land and to have more control. And like, that's the opposite of what Jesus teaches.
It seems to be, but not to a lot of people. Hang on, that's your opinion on that.
That's what the Bible says.
Well, I know, but it's the way you interpret the Bible. But other people who also read the Bible, they see it obviously very different. You know, like Donald Trump had a group of pastors lay their hands on him and pray for him right before he called for war to bomb people in Iran.
That's horrible.
Okay, so that's your take. But there are other people. Are you a Christian?
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? Here.
I mean,
By
obviously.
the way, hang on really fast. I do want to give you the option to say, I don't know, man, that's above my pay grade. But go ahead, give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it is above my pay grade, but like, it's pretty messed up. But you know, at the same time, like, you can say that about a whole lot of other religions. You can say pretty similar things.
No, very, very true. We're going to get to those in a second. I'm just hitting this one.
I mean, you shouldn't kill people, but at the end of the day, like, just because Christians are responsible for a lot of deaths, you can't really put any blame on them the same way you can't put any blame on everyone else.
Yes, so somehow religion and teachings are not enough to shield human beings from these really nefarious actions that get undertaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is true around the world, right? Doesn't matter if Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists, agnostics. It's for me, are you Christian? So for me, it's just something to wrestle with, you know what I mean? Dude, you're a Christian. Wait, hang on a second now. How do you wrestle with this? You're black and you're a Christian.
I would say for me, when it comes to like wars and things of that nature, similar to, I know Griffin, because
no, but you're like really Christian, because
Yeah.
you told me earlier in the semester, like, I'm hardcore Christian. Look at you, the cross. You wear this big cross. You have 2 crosses, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel.
Can you make sure you get a camera on him?
Similar to Griffin, I feel like just because people are Christian and they do it, doesn't mean, like, for example, Jesus did not advocate for that, and also for people who killed Jewish individuals, Jesus died because, and he was crucified for being called the king of the Jews. So it's kind of like that. Just because people do it and they're Christian doesn't mean that that's what Christianity is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the same
yeah.
way for me as a black man, if I were to go and kill somebody, you
Yeah.
can't say, oh, all black people going to do that
Uh-huh.
just because I decided out of my own power to do that. Because, of
Yeah.
course, God gives us the free will to do what we please.
Yeah.
And then just because I claim the title doesn't mean that that whole title does the same thing. Same way
Yeah.
I'm not going to call you racist just because you're white.
Yeah. Okay. Or you wouldn't call me anti-Christian or anti-religious just because I'm asking you all to answer this question, because I'm not that either. Here, go to the next slide. Hatan, go back. No, back, right there. Okay. In the 20th century, Hatan, Muslims were responsible for like 7 to 12 million deaths.
Sure.
How do you make sense of that?
Yeah, I
And
think.
most of them are killing other Muslims, by the way, which you're not supposed to do in Islam.
I think that falls very much under the same kind of things that they were saying, is in the same way that like a lot of, Christian scripture has been misinterpreted. A lot of the Quran has also been, misused by a lot of different groups to justify different acts. So
Mhm.
I think it goes in the same vein.
Yeah, it's the same. It seems to me the same. In the Christian Bible, it doesn't say Christians can't kill other Christians. In the Quran, it definitively says, doesn't it? The Muslims
Correct,
can't
yeah.
kill other Muslims.
It
But
shouldn't be, no.
many Muslims seem to miss that passage, since it seems, yeah, well, okay. Can you go to the next slide? All right, so in the 21st century, thus far, the first quarter, the first 25 years, about 5 million people, combatants and civilians, have died. And I should make the argument, I should say, that most people that die in modern wars are civilians. So when we are bombing Iran, are you thinking about this? As we're bombing Iran, most people who are dying are civilians in Iran. They're not soldiers. Right, they're civilians, and so that's a really. There might be a reason to think about it. Your government, because you're all four of you are Americans, right? U.S. citizens. So your government is bombing another country, but most of the people who are dying are civilians, just like people in this classroom. So there would be an argument to, hey, you might want to follow what's going on, because, we, the citizens, are killing other citizens, so it's a thought. Okay, but anyway, I don't want to just jump off of that, but go to the next slide. Okay, soldiers from majority Christian nations have killed about 2 million people in the 21st century. So the 20th century was a really unique century of major wars and conflicts and so on, right? And it just so happened that Christianity was very much kind of leading the way in so much death and destruction. But in the 21st, go one more. But Muslims are now equal with Christians in terms of killing people. So if Muslims had done what Christians did in the 20th century, then that'd be an extreme amount of people. So Muslims have shown that they are, in the 21st century anywhere, just as equally inclined to engage in armed conflict and kill other people, most of whom are civilians. Right. Do you ever thought about that as a Muslim?
Yeah, I definitely.
What's going? Hang on, I want to be very specific. Where we're headed now, that whereas Muslims and Christians, the two largest religions in the world, are equal in terms of just the willingness to kill.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also has to do with less about the inclination, but also more so because the Middle East as a region has been very, unstable since the beginning of the 21st century. And, it's a region that is majority Muslim. And so I think that probably has a large role to play in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I like that. Leslie Ann, do you have a comment? Okay, first we'll go to you, Leslie Ann first. So, do you know what he just said about the Middle East, about Muslim areas of the world, but Middle East in particular, has been very unstable for the past 25 to 50 years. Do you have any explanation in your mind as to why that is? Do you have an under, because people say, oh, there's a lot of conflict in the Middle East. Oh, it's unstable. So wait, because why? Do you have an answer to that? You can not have an answer. I wouldn't expect you to have an answer, but.
I wouldn't expect me to have an answer either. I would say that I don't know enough about the situation, but I would also say, well, first let me ask, are the conflicts both internal and external?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would say that a possibility could be resources, maybe a conflict of power.
Okay, all right.
But other than that, I don't know.
Okay, all right. So conflict over power. Like something's going on with a shift in power. And then that makes me say like, who are the people, what's the power, and what are they fighting over, right? And then we'll go to Griffin.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the power is oil. The power lies in oil,
Hold it close.
and the wealth that is derived from oil, I think, has been one of the predominant factors in instability from foreign governments and internally in the Middle East.
Okay, all right. And then you got to say, like, okay, wait, how does that get played out, right? Okay. Griffin.
Yeah, I just had a thought. So we say soldiers from majority Christian nations have killed about 2 million people in the 21st century. And so I just think it's important to consider the fact that the people making these calls to go to war, I'll just talk about the U.S. The U.S. is a Christian nation,
Mm-hmm.
but
not officially.
not officially.
No, because we're not officially connected to any religion. So, by the way, any Christians out there? We're not officially a Christian nation. So, okay. Just like English is not our official language, but whatever.
What is a?
But we are, more people are Christian in the U.S. than any other religion, but not by far, actually, but
Yeah. Well, I guess my point was, and I guess the U.S. is not officially a Christian nation. I didn't know that. But for those countries who are Christian nations, I don't believe that the people making those decisions are going, yeah, this is what God wants me to do, is to go to war, to do that, at least modern day. I would think that it's mostly about money, power, and control.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we can put the Christian nation label on it, but I don't think they're necessarily going to war for because they believe that that's God's will for them.
No, for sure. Not at all.
Yeah.
Even in the 20th century, that wasn't the case.
So
all the killing that was happening wasn't it's like onward Christian soldier stuff. It wasn't that. Nobody's killing in the name. Even Muslims are not killing in the name of Allah. I mean, sometimes some suicide bomber will say, Allahu Akbar. They'll say something, right, to in the name of Allah. But state actors are not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was important to think about that and not to just put that label on it and think that that's why they were going to war.
Well, yeah. No,
and
but what's interesting is how easily, and I think one of the reasons we have classes like this, like Social 19 or the class that follows this class, Knowing Right from Wrong. You take classes like this to wrestle with these ideas. So when you get in certain positions of decision making, you can see your decision making from many different perspectives, and how is that?
Yeah.
But you sound like a really, I can feel your energy. You sound like a very thoughtful Christian.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and so okay, but when push comes to shove, and how does that inform decisions that you make, right? That's in the end what it's about, right? So let me ask you guys. Let me ask you another question, though. I got a question. Hey, At what point does a nation, Joe, we're going to go with you, at what point does a nation know that they are strong enough and safe enough? At what point do people in a nation know they're strong enough and safe enough so we don't need more weapons and we don't need to defend ourselves or be aggressive or whatever the case is?
When all the threats are neutralized.
When all the threats are neutralized. So what's that mean?
Like anything that could affect us at home. Like nuclear threats, anything that could affect us, anything that could disturb our way of life.
Okay, so that's us. And then how about your neighbor nation? How about that's for this nation here on this side of this blue line, and then how about the nation on this side of the blue line? What's the answer for them?
When they feel safe enough, same thing. Like as long as there's no one like directly threatening them, then they should be fine.
So for them, it's the same, right? When all the threats are neutralized.
Yep.
What's it mean to neutralize a threat?
Make it no longer able to harm you.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Layla?
You know what? Can you come back to me?
All right, okay. Well, let me show you something, okay? Go to the next slide. Okay, so here's military spending in the world in 2024. So the U.S. is over 40%, close. We're fairly close to half. We're upwards to half, about 45%. Okay. When you see that, Joe, given what you just said, look at behind the U.S. we have China, then we have Russia, and then okay. How much more should we spend?
I think we're already spending a pretty good amount. We got all the best stuff in the world. We got the most aircraft carriers. I don't think we need very much more.
Okay, but think about think about Russia, think about China, think about all these other countries here, and then think about the U.S. What are they thinking about what they need to protect themselves?
A lot of those countries we're like really good friends with, and we protect them. And then Russia and China, obviously, they've got their stuff beefed up because we're not as good friends with them. But they'd never like directly engage with us because that would end the world. Okay,
but it might happen. But okay, Hatan, how about you? When you look at that, who are you most afraid of?
It would make sense. If I were not an American, it would make sense for me to be scared of the U.S. most. We're spending like triple of China's, been the second biggest spender. So.
Mm-hmm. So you'd be afraid of yourself. You'd be afraid of this country.
Of the U.S. government at large, yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm. Griffin, I have a question for you. So let's say, I just thought of this, by the way. I'm going to, Let me see if I can do this without. Okay, so let's say there's a nation here who looks at the United States and says, you guys have you've got a government that's really oppressing your people. This is really quite a problem for you. And your government's increasingly looking like it's anti-democratic and, all this stuff. And you're dangerous because look at how much you're spending on weapons. You have more nuclear weapons than anybody else in the world. You're just so dangerous. You have a president who seems from the outside to be fairly erratic, right? I'm not saying he's erratic, but, we think that he is. And so, okay. So we're going to bomb you, and not only that, we're going to kill your president. And then they do. And How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so when you asked that last question about at what point do you feel safe, my first thought was, or you worded it like, at what point do you stop?
Yeah.
My first thought is that like they just don't stop, because you might reach that safe point where you don't feel threatened anymore, but then when you don't feel like you have any threats,
Yeah.
you just want to be more dominant and just build that gap so
Okay.
that you can overpower everybody, and that's why there's $1 trillion in spending on
Okay.
military.
So you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's what you should do.
No,
but
I got
that is
you, but
clearly
this-
what is going on.
It seems
And
to
the
be what
U.S.
goes on.
is kind of just saying like it's our way or the highway, and so
Okay, so now somebody comes in. So Joe, so someone comes in here and they decide you're being oppressed and we're scared of you because you got these bombs and we don't want you to have them anymore. So we're going to attack you and we're going to kill your leader. How you feeling about that?
I mean, obviously, I would not be happy. Like if I was trying to build weapons of mass destruction, and someone came in and blew them all up.
Well, you have weapons of mass destruction here.
On the States here.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it depends on how my relationship is with the country that we're blowing up. Like if I think that, this country's building weapons of mass destruction, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can trust them with that. I think they're gonna be reasonable with them, like our other friends on the pie chart. But if I think that they're gonna, do some not so nice things with them, then I might have to act. I might have to do something about it.
What do you think the Iranian people are thinking right now? About 10% of Iran was really strongly supported the Iranian government, right? Leslie, I'm going to ask you this. Hang on. So about 10%, the estimates are about 10% of the nation of Iran, like really, really supported the theocratic regime, right? The theocratic government. I don't want to call it a regime.
Can I ask what the other 90% supported? Was
Yeah,
there anything specific?
they mostly are pushing up against it because people aren't like people in religious nations are not really that radical. In the United States, you have a few people who are like radical Christians, man. They just want to push Christianity onto every single person. But the vast majority of Christians in the U.S., they're not like that. They're like Griffin right here. It's just like, dude, I'm just trying to be one with Jesus and be a nice person, right? Same in Iran. So, people are like, I don't like this. I don't want to be women. I don't want to be forced to wear a hijab. I don't want to be forced to do these things that my government is telling me I'm forced to do. But the estimates is somewhere around 10%, and maybe we could go as high as 20, or like, no, I love it, man, and we need more of it, and that kind of thing. But the vast majority of people are not. What do you think those people are thinking now?
The supporters?
The ones who didn't support.
They probably feel like they are paying the consequences for something that they didn't support.
Yeah,
Because
how do they think they feel? I mean, what do you think's going on then?
I think they would clearly be upset, but I think they would probably, I don't think that they would want to revolt because that's not convenient either. But yeah, I have no words.
Yeah, well, and that's a question, right? Like, do you, at what point do you use the weaponry that you have, like the power that you have, to liberate other people from their oppression?
But is there power? Is there enough power to actually liberate, or is there enough power to get you started?
Well,
and then you'll have to figure it out.
Well, this is part of the problem,
Right.
right? I mean, this is, of course, what we're always dealing with, what everybody's dealing with, right? Huh. Okay. So, so here, Hatan, right? So if I have a nuclear weapon and you're my neighbor, what do you want?
Probably my own nuclear weapon.
Okay, if I have 2, how many you want?
Probably 2.
Uh-huh. And if I have 500, what do you want?
500.
I mean, it seems that way. Like, we're not invading North Korea. We're not going into North Korea. North Korea now suddenly, it looks like they've developed the capacity to have nuclear weapons. No one's invading them, so it worked. It seems like it's working. It's like, yeah, we're not gonna attack North Korea. They're gonna send nuclear weapons around other places. So if Iran is saying like, hey, we got to get nukes, why do you think they want to get nukes?
Probably for their own protection.
Well, this is a question, right? Do you want them to have nukes?
I mean, I don't think we can be the sole determiners of who can and can't have nukes.
Well, this is part of the problem. I don't want anyone to have nukes, right? I mean, we don't want anyone to have nukes, but this is an issue.
We already have a bunch of our own, though, so.
Yeah, but we have too many. You could argue we have too many. I mean, one is too many. Like, if you think about it, the insanity of it. And I don't want anyone to have, I definitely don't want the Iranians to have nuclear weapons. That's not even a question. I don't even want them to have a tiny nuclear weapon. But at the same time, when I look at this military spending here, I'm like, well, you just keep you just keep going, right? And then where do you stop? So we're in this circle of insanity here with who do you think is, when you look at that map up there, who do you think's most responsible for arming the world? Joe, hang on. Joe, who do you think's most responsible for weaponizing the planet? For wars and weaponizing the planet? Well, hang on. Let me ask you a simple question. Who do you think's most protected?
United States of America.
Definitely. Yeah, we're most protected. I mean, who's going to come after us? You know what I mean? You come after us. We have all these weapons. You come after us. And we're like, yeah, you're going to pay the price. So it works. I mean, that's not a question. So it's like, damn. And if we had double that?
I mean, diminishing returns, I don't think that would.
I don't know. Maybe it might work twice as well. Donald Trump is saying, well, we're going to spend an extra $500 billion on the military. I'm like, well, all right, just keep spending. I don't know. I'm not one. That's above my pay grade. But the idea here is like, okay, so who do you think is most responsible for arming the world?
I mean, arming meaning like what?
Meaning like getting people wanting to go out and buy weapons and get more and more and more and more and.
I think that's a complicated question.
It is a very complicated question, by the way.
Because I think everyone's threatened by someone different,
Yeah, exactly, dude. That's a really good answer. It doesn't matter. Bangladesh is wanting weapons not because of the U.S. They want weapons for other reasons. They want to protect themselves from somebody else. Pakistan, same thing. India, same thing, right? So, yeah. Bro.
Last month, the last Cold War era nuclear non-proliferation treaty officially lapsed without a replacement. Do you think we'll see a continuation in nuclear proliferation from third states who want their nation's actions not to be meddled with externally? I mean, the U.S. hasn't tried to overthrow North Korea, and they have nukes. Mm-hmm. Iran doesn't.
What do you think about that?
So what was the
No, never mind. You don't have to
what was
answer.
the law that
Yeah, you don't have
expired?
to answer, bro. Let me ask you this. Let me answer the question. I think we're in a very difficult situation in the world, right? We talk about war, but war isn't inevitable, right? I mean, none of this is inevitable. It seems like once you start down this path here, right? I'm down the path. I get some weapons. The people on this side got to get weapons. Then I'm going to get more, and they're going to get more, and we're just going to keep doing that until when? We're not, we don't have an overabundance of We're not trying to export electric vehicles around the world or baby carriages.
The answer was until we signed the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty,
Yeah.
which lapsed last month.
No, we could do that, but we don't do that. And the question is, why aren't we doing that?
I think that people, and I don't know who these people I'm referring to are, but I think there are people who believe that going to war is going to fix the problem of having to go to war, and that you win this one and then you're done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But I don't.
Is this something that you think people in your generation are thinking more and more? Like, do you find that among your friends, for example, they're like, man, we gotta, to what degree do you find that, like, your friends are saying, like, we gotta stop this insanity versus, no, we gotta arm up, man, we gotta, like.
So I don't think that, I can't say that I've heard people talk about, what the next proper solution would be, but I'd say that there's definitely a clear understanding that it's not working, and maybe what we've been told the reasoning is for going to war isn't necessarily what the actual reasoning is.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that most people in our generation would agree that we'd rather just not go to war if that's possible, and it's not working.
Well, it does make me wonder when I look at all this spending here, when I think about this, it makes me wonder. It's like once you get an economy going, it's like Penn State. We built all these classrooms here. We have all the instructors. We have all the infrastructure. We have everything in place. We just got to keep filling the seats with students. Like, you can't stop. Like, what are we going to do? Like, close down half the campus and just let the buildings fall apart? You got to just keep going. So, that seems to be an issue here.
Yeah, hello. I think that...
Wait, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Denzel.
Okay.
I think that war is not inevitable. We established that earlier. But I do think conflict is inevitable. And I think that when we get to the stage of war, it is the stage where diplomacy can no longer happen. We can no longer discuss or come to a conclusion. So...
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to just cut you off right there. How'd you come to that conclusion that there are times when diplomacy can't happen? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
Because I think of war as the lapse of any diplomatic action. Like, you don't get to war if you've talked conflict out, it doesn't become a war. If you find a way to come to an agreement, understanding, or it won't become a war. A war is when you are both going to fight and kill someone, and you can no longer discuss it because they're dead.
But here, listen though, bro. Here, can I just say something? When you look at all this money that's being spent on weapons, and the only way you can spend more, you got to spend more. It's not like food. You buy all the wheat crop of all the farmers in Nebraska one year, and then they're going to plant the next year, and you're going to have a new source of income, right? I mean, it's just going to happen. This isn't like that. You can't sell more weapons if you don't use the old weapons. I mean, eventually they become obsolete, but that takes a long time. So it makes me wonder about diplomacy. Makes me wonder that. Like, wait, hang on. How do we know diplomacy, when it breaks? Diplomacy would, under the right conditions, meaning people who are really serious about peace, diplomacy would never break down. I mean, virtually never break down. And unless you had a schizophrenic or sociopathic leaders at the table, in which case just replace them with more reasonable people.
I think that, because the reasons we're going to these wars or combat operations, or whatever you want to call it, is to preserve interests of our military, of our corporations, of our state. Mm-hmm. And so if you constantly destabilize other areas and
okay, let me ask you a question. Are you an American?
Yes.
U.S. citizen?
Yes.
How does it feel to when people go to war to protect your interests? Okay, so now, we're going to war. Start your sentence with this. We're engaging in a lot of wars to protect my interest. Denzel, right? Me, Denzel. When I think about that, I think,
When we go to war for my interests, I think that is a contradiction, because I do not think that we should be going to war at all, I think we should be looking for a diplomatic resolution if it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay.
that it's a lie. It states my
Okay.
interest.
All right, okay, that's cool. Thanks, man. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. People sell arms around the world, okay? Leslie Ann, in those 5 years, your country was responsible for over 40% of the arms being sold around the world, which are many, many billions of dollars, I should add. That's you, my friend. That is you. You're a tax-paying American. So, like, weapons exporters. So not only are we building weapons for us, we're selling them around the world. So if you go back one slide, see all this spending on weapons? People are spending it. They're making their own weapons, but they're also buying them from other people. Okay, so now go forward. What's that? I don't know, when you look at that, does anything come to mind?
That's upsetting. That's upsetting that that's where my tax dollars are going.
Well, no, it's actually revenue.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, yeah. This is revenue for you. So,
But it's
Denzel,
coming and going.
this is your
so-
interest. This helping to keep your tuition down. And there are all sorts of things. You know,
Tuition
Penn
down.
State, we do a lot of research on weaponry, and that's part of what keeps a lot of stuff going here. And like, okay. Look, this is not, by the way, this is not anti-American. This is stuff that we need to think about as citizens. So it's like, all right. I don't know. Dude, I could make the argument that we should sell twice as much. That number 41.7 should be 51.7. Right? I could make that argument. We could all make that argument. It's just not, you know.
I mean, but we also have to take into consideration that because of things like this is why we are in the place that we're at as a country. So, like, if we didn't export this many weapons, would we still be at the same point that we are right now?
That's a
Like,
good question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
If we didn't spend as much
Okay.
on like weapons and stuff, would we still be?
Wait, do you have an answer to that question? Go ahead. Here you go. Right here.
I mean, I think part of that graph you got to take into consideration is like who we're selling the weapons to. I mean, like he said, it's a lot of revenue, and then the other thing is we're arming our friends in Europe. I mean, you look at these European countries; they carry American guns, they fly American
Wait, hang
planes.
on. Do you know that?
What?
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Do you know who we sell it to?
Yeah, our friends in NATO.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're
Yeah.
not selling F-35s to Sri Lanka. I mean, it's.
Well, actually, so here, this would be a question for you. When you get on after class, find out who we're selling our weapons to, and each country is selling them to. Right? Most of them, they're all going to allies at some level. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're anti-democratic allies. They're allies who haven't had elections in 30 or 40
I
years.
mean, we do advance our interests with
Here,
selling
go to the
weapons.
next slide. All right. So so there's a whole bunch of folks, right? So Saudi Arabia doesn't. They're an ally. They don't have
Yeah,
elections.
Saudi Arabia's great, but
Okay.
they advance our
Qatar.
interests.
Pakistan. I mean, these are just importers. They're not necessarily the ones where we're selling most of our weapons. But, bro,
Hi, my name is Christian. Do you think it is in our best interest to sell even people that can become potential enemies weapons because it boosts our production, it boosts our economy, which leads us to being more stable? So maybe the question is, we think that war is like the ultimate decision, but what if it's not a war that we're going to be fighting? So isn't it better that we fund other people's wars?
yeah, what if it's wars that we're not fighting? We're funding other wars from other people. Like right now, Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting each other. It's like, oh man, they just said the Pakistanis, they just bombed this, what appears to be a hospital in Kabul. 400 people died. And probably, it's very likely those are weapons that we sold them. Like, what do you think about that?
I think that
Hang on, that's a leading question. That's a problem. But this is an issue, right? So so just go to Christian's question.
All right, so Christian, he asked me.
He asked, like, what do you think? What about, should we be like, you're selling stuff to other people that are going to use the weapons against each other and kill each other?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Christian. I think that over the last century, we have sold weapons to a lot of people to advance our foreign interests.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether or not the people that we sell them to make very good decisions with them is but at the end of the day, we're doing it to protect ourselves and advance our foreign policy.
That's a standard argument that people make, right? Have you heard that argument? That's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean, the government is going to treat itself like a business, and so I think that in most cases, whether it's going to war or selling weapons, they're doing, for a capitalist country, they're going to do what is earning them a profit in most circumstances.
No, like McDonald's sells shit food that is really bad for people's health, but they sell it anyway.
Yeah, because it's making them money.
Well, yeah, it makes money. It's what it is.
And it lets them open more stores.
Or
they
Penn
can keep
State
doing
offers really terrible classes just because they need to offer classes. So it's like, we do all sorts of stupid things here that just because we
charge
can.
the same amount, yeah.
And charge the same amount, huh?
Have you ever watched The Office? This conversation makes me think about the episode where Michael, the accountants come to Michael and they're like, Michael, it's the end of the year and we haven't spent the whole budget. So if we don't spend the whole budget, they're going to lower our budget for next year. So we need to spend the whole thing. And so like the whole episode is just Michael trying to find a way, are they going to buy a new printer? Are they going to throw a party? Like just doing whatever it took to spend money to show corporate that they hit their quota so that they can get as much, if not more money for next year.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre like that. Yeah. Huh.
That's just what it made me think of.
Bro.
Yes, I have a stance against having America produce more weapons or having them be a majority of the producers. Because yes, it gives you control, but it also gives you incentives to start war, to keep wars going.
How so?
Because you're making more money. So a war in Iran is very beneficial to the contractors and to companies like Palantir, because yes, people are dying, but hey, I'm making more money. So yes, gas prices are going up, but I've got reserves. I can stay alive for the next 100 days.
So you would say that you would probably make the argument that people who are making weapons are probably not on the front end of organizing.
They're not fighting.
Conflict resolution organizations.
Right. They're making money.
Yeah.
So let me make some extra money right now, and then we can resolve it later. But
yeah,
let's think utilitarian, as they call it.
Yeah, that's kind of always the thing, right? I mean, I think all four of you kind of agreed there. It's like we can always make the argument up here that there's a greater goal, but in the moment, we got to think about what our interests are. We're going to do the quiz in a second, but in the middle of all of this, I just want to say something. I want to you all, remember that the majority of people who die from all of these weapons are civilians just like us in the room. They're not people who signed up to go to war. They're people who are trying to live their lives. I mean, that's true all over the world. So, just hold that. Hey, can we have a round of applause? You guys did a good job. Nice job, man.